welcome to our podcast. This is Welcome to Livingston, and I'm Angela Putkela.
And I'm Don Putkela.
And we are with the Putkela Group Real Estate Professionals with Keller Williams in Brighton. And today, so in terms of our show, focusing on all the things that are so fun and exciting about Livingston County, we have a very special treat and something kind of different. It's a children's book author that is local, that is doing some great things, and we really want to focus in on her and her book. And so we're going to welcome Lindsay McFarlane.
Thank you so much.
Great, welcome. So Lindsay, why don't you talk to us about your book? It's called Crimson, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yes, so thank you again for having me here. And Crimson was released almost a year ago, so we are circling about a year anniversary from the book launch. But it's a fictional story about a new crayon that joined a well-established box of 8. And his arrival was not met with a very warm welcome. Through a journey of self-discovery, he identified this beautiful color of his own and actually taught the other crayons the importance of working together. They learned about kindness, friendship, and at the end, they created a magnificent piece of art together. But the real lesson for the story is about kindness, inclusion, and the beauty that resides in a more colorful world.
What a beautiful sentiment. I love that. And it's a great message for kids, you know?
No, it's just a really good message, and it's a wonderful book. I enjoy the book quite a bit myself and such. I mean, Angela brought it to me, and it's just so well written, and it's fun, and it has a wonderful message.
Thank you.
An underlying tone that, where the kids are getting a lesson and they don't even realize it.
That was the whole point of writing the book.
Yeah. So what age group does it appeal to?
This is really for readers 4 through 8, but I can tell you my youngest reader is only 6 days old, and I think my oldest reader that I'm aware of is probably closer to 13. So it spans, and honestly, the message is really good for anybody of all ages. I think it's a good reminder of how to lead life.
Right. Just really resonates, I think.
Yeah.
Well, when everybody remembers drawing and using crayons, and then the importance of the different colors. So at a 2, 3, 4 years old, they can understand it on an innate level.
Absolutely.
Now, as you were deciding to do it, how did you decide to use crayons to get it across?
So the crayons, first of all, my kids love art, and the whole premise of this story actually stemmed from a bedtime story that I shared with the boys. And this was something that we always do every night. We make up a story, and it's usually mom's way of teaching them an important daily lesson. So at the time, it was really trying to teach the kids about people that are different from them. And I wanted to do that through crayons because they understand crayons. They love crayons. They play with them. They love to get messy. And so for me, that was my connection to teaching them about color and then just people that are different from ourselves. So that's kind of how I arrived at the using crayons to get the message across. But there was a really important part of the story, and obviously crimson is a shade of red, and the red is actually my oldest son, Ben's favorite color.
Aww.
And so I wanted something that could resonate with him, but I also chose a shade of red just because red is passionate, it's bright, it's bold, it symbolizes strength, and I wanted this character to be really unique. The other aspects of Crimson is that he also is a little edgy. He is a skateboarder, and I also wanted him to have somewhat of a cool factor, and so that was really important in terms of bringing it to life in the book.
Wonderful. So much thought behind that, people don't even really realize. And in terms of, I just love how positive the message is. And in terms of the inspiration, is there anything else kind of behind the scenes there that brought you to this?
Well, I would tell you that definitely my kids inspired me to write this story. And it's funny because I tell them a bedtime story every night. And I told this story the night before. And it was actually the following night they asked me to repeat the story. And so I typically don't get requests for a repeat. So whenever they asked for a repeat, I was like, oh, something must be extra special about this. So that night I decided to write it out. And I wrote out the story. I worked on it for quite a while. And then I shared it actually with a special friend and colleague who's a super creative individual and somebody that I definitely respect. And I thought, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? And he really encouraged me to go forward with that. So it was really wrote it for my kids. I've always wanted to write a story. I do a lot of industry blogging and I love reading. And so it's just something that I've always been passionate about.
Oh, wonderful.
Wow, that is so cool. So if you don't mind asking, how long ago was that you wrote it down?
Yeah, so it took me, I started writing actually during the pandemic, and it took a full year. So from the idea to actually bringing it to print. And there was a lot that went into it. I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later, but it was a full year, I would say, from actually writing that idea down to actually deciding to self-publish it.
Wow.
Makes sense. Now, what was it like trying to find an illustrator then?
So the illustration was probably my favorite part of this whole story. And this is crazy how this came together. So initially, of course, I wrote this manuscript. I went ahead and had it copywritten so that, that's the number one thing that I always say, have your story copywritten first before you start talking to anybody about it. And I kind of didn't quite know where to go at that point because this was my first time going through this process. And so I ended up getting hooked up with Fiverr, which is a gig space for illustrators and other artists. And I pulled 3 different pages together on just different pieces of the narrative and sent it off to a number of illustrators. And actually some of the illustrators were outside of the US. And I did get a lot of really creative work back, but nothing really was hitting home. And so it was interesting. I have known this woman by the name of Lana Trazer for a long time. She actually shot my wedding in Mackinac Island. And she happened to get stuck in Russia visiting her mother who was ill during the pandemic. Oh, and so she decided to turn to watercolor, and she started posting these beautiful pictures that she had painted of Russian nesting dolls, Matryoshka dolls. And I happened to reach out to her and said, hey, I have a really crazy adventure I'm looking at doing. And I would love for you to think about, drawing these characters and just to see if there might be a connection. And right out the gate, she read the story, loved it. And of course, she was absolutely willing to and interested in doing it. And she sent me a few cuts and they were amazing. And what was really special about Lana is that she actually immigrated to the US from Russia many, many years ago. She met her husband here and she's been living here for over 15 years. But she had, at the time, she doesn't anymore, but she had this beautiful red hair. And she said that she always kind of felt like an outsider living in the US, having migrated from Russia. Wow. And she felt like the story paralleled her life.
Wow.
And I just felt this sense of connection with her because I knew her and she's just such a lovely lady. And I knew that we would figure it out. And it ended up being perfect. And we went through a zillion iterations of the illustrations, but it ended up being so perfect.
How fantastic.
And this is her first book. This is her first, she does a number of just beautiful art, but this was the first time that she's ever done anything like this. And what was interesting is that all of the characters in the story, they're based in watercolor, but then she added the crayon accents to, so obviously it's a story about a crayon. So we wanted that to come through in the paper.
Yeah.
That is so
great.
unique.
Yeah, because they really were beautiful, very striking.
Thank you.
That's just so interesting because we never know the talents of the people that we know that we have in our life. And then to go out there and to look for an illustrator, that you didn't know, and then to have that jump into your life exactly when you needed it for this. That's just
With that
so
personal
great.
connection.
Oh yeah. And it's made this adventure so much more important, I have to say. So I've traveled a little bit with the book. We've got a number of different bookstores throughout Michigan, and I through the summer did a summer tour where I went all the way to Glen Arbor and Leelanau and Mackinac.
Book tour. That's so great.
It was so much fun. Yeah, it was a Crimson summer road trip, and just being able to be with her and hang out, and it was just really, it made just the adventure that much more special.
How fabulous. Oh,
Thanks.
that personal connection.
Yeah.
Right. No, that is really, really cool. So, we talked a little bit about, the Illustrator and such, but how does it come together? How do you even start that process of, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to self-publish? I mean, it just seems so daunting,
Especially
but here you are and you went on a tour and...
Yeah, it was definitely the biggest learning process that I've self-learning process, I would say, that I've ever gone through. And yeah, I learned a lot, would do things differently, some things, if I were to do it all over again. But I really had to do a lot of self-education, and I did a lot of reading. In fact, there's a book out there for self-publishers that is written by Yvonne Jones, and it's just an awesome book about just grounding yourself in what you need to do, where you need to start. But it was exciting and nerve-wracking. I of course had the Illustrator. I did have a really close friend that also added a lot of color to the character and the storyline. And then I had another former colleague, Jessica Angerstein, that was a graphic designer that I worked with, and she is now a book editor. And so she helped me really bring all of the watercolor illustrations with the text, and did all of the pagination, and basically primed it for me to release to the bookstore or to the printer. And the printer that I ended up choosing was local. I definitely that was important to me to source local.
Right.
And so the whole production was done by McNaughton & Gunn in Saline, and they are fabulous. They're a super small printer. I would tell you that it was funny because I really struggled to find somebody that would pick up such a small job, and starting out small, that was important to me, to find somebody that was willing to take on the opportunity. But I hardly got any calls back initially because the print run was so small. McNaughton & Gunn was willing to work with me, and I have to tell you, the quality to the customer service was just amazing. And of course it was, again, local, and
Right.
It was really nice to be able to work with someone locally. Picking up that book for the first time, I think
Must have been quite a feeling.
it was really cool. So they loaded up the trunk of my car, and I'm going to admit this, I drove a half a mile out of the parking lot, and I tore into that box. And so it was really cool just to be able to touch and feel. It's kind of, I have two kids. I've labored two children, and I feel like this was like it was like my third baby.
Yeah.
10 plus months of hard work, and then you get to actually hold it. It's quite amazing. And my kids were the second individuals to actually hold the book, and just the light that, illuminated from their faces whenever they got to see mommy's hard work was pretty cool. So.
All right.
That is just fantastic. Thanks. So awesome. And I mean, this is a passion of my own. This is something that's always been a dream for me. So, I mean, is there any advice for me and others like me that might be interested in writing our own children's
Absolutely.
book? What would you,
Yeah.
what would you suggest?
So I would always suggest do it. If you don't, and if you don't get representation, read How to Self-Publish a Children's Book by Yvonne Jones. It's a really good one. The other bit of advice I told you, obviously, get that manuscript copywritten right out the gate. And that's a process. So you have to file it with the copyright you've got to go through all of the legal steps. It does take a little bit of time, but do that. And then the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, it's the SCBWI, is a super great resource, especially for self-published authors. And the other thing I'll tell you is that I went into this doing it just on a whim for fun. I wanted to really spread the message out there but at the end of the day, this is something that I'm doing for fun. It is not a part-time job. It is really hard, and I work full time, and I'm very involved with my kiddos. So I would just suggest that be patient and definitely hire an editor as well. We ended up finding out after the first print run, there was 2 little tiny mistakes that probably could have been caught. And we had to do a second print run all over again.
Oh my
goodness. There was, unfortunately, the spine was missing. We didn't do a proof on the spine. We did it on the front and the back cover. So we missed that. That is a requirement for bookstores. Obviously, if they have an outward facing book, they need to see the spine. And then there was a super small typo, which in the English language, it could go both ways, but the, Americans prefer the spelling. It was for acknowledgments was the word.
Okay. I was going to say, was it gray? That's a color of a crayon potentially.
Yeah.
But yeah. Wow. Great. Now, where can people get the book?
Yes. So the book is available many different places. So www.crimsonthecrayon.com is my website. And you can see within it, there's a link to purchasing it right off of the site. There's also a section that has all of the independent retailers and bookstores that have the book in stock. 2 Dandelions here in Brighton I call them my local HQ. They've been incredible. They helped me get my first start, and they have the book. And it is also available on Amazon via Kindle, paperback, and hard copy as well.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Yep. And in terms of the Dandelions Bookshop, it's so cute, so local. I don't know if any of our listeners, aren't familiar with it, but that's definitely a great place worth checking out to support local in a couple different ways, right?
Yeah, and we actually, so March is National Reading Awareness Month. It's also the anniversary of the story, and March 31st happens to be, it's National Crayon Day. And we are actually having a really fun crayon party at 11 o'clock at 2 Dandelions on the 31st. And I will be reading story time, and we have a very special crayon-inspired popsicle stick puppet craft. And we're also going to be giving away a little prize to anybody that decides to come and show up. And it happens to be Brighton area's spring break. So if anybody's staying home, has a staycation planned, definitely come visit. Hopefully we get a nice sunny day.
That is awesome. And I think it is so beneficial, when you have a local bookstore, you have a local author that's coming to the bookstore. And with a children's book, kids being able to meet the author and being able to have the book read by the author. What a unique experience, and what
an inspiration.
A great event and takeaway for the kids, something they can touch and see and hear, and again, with such a wonderful message.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's been the coolest part of authoring a book has just been being able to get in front of these kiddos and read to them, and the energy that they give me is, it's just amazing. And there's nothing like just having, I was in Glen Arbor and had a father come up to me and just share that the story inspired his daughter to write. And there's just nothing like that. It's pretty cool.
Just making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
That is so great. Now, what comes next? Any thoughts about a sequel or?
So I'm not doing a sequel. I've got a lot of runway left, I feel like, on this book. I definitely am really looking at any partnerships. So partnerships with nonprofit, or looking at potential representation by a publisher. And I did write another book. It's called Shelby and Slug. And I haven't yet started the process of getting the manuscript really in position with getting it copywritten. And but I will be going the route of publishing versus self-publishing for the second book. But yeah, I'm excited. The story's really coming together, but I do want to give this Crimson story just a little bit more time to fully, get in the hands of more readers.
And I think in the world today, it's a message that is so positive for kids and something to be able to hear and see on their level.
Yeah, I agree.
There needs to be more kindness in the world.
I agree. Yeah, it's a great reminder.
Honest to goodness. The Parker's production of Beauty and the Beast just wrapped up, and we sat down with those kids, middle schoolers, and our son was on there. And one of the things I believe our son is just so remarkable anyway. He's the sweetest kid in the world. When he was 1 year old, I'd give him a cookie, he'd break it in half and hand me half. And it's like, what kid does that?
That's so sweet.
But when he started practicing for the play, he said, Mom, I'm going to go into practice each day and I'm going to make a new friend. He's 14 years old. And it's just amazing. And so he really added a lot of positivity to that environment, and the kids just got along so well and really became friends. And so that was really kind of a fun thing. And so I think, kids at all ages, really hearing stories about kindness really just helps add to it.
I agree.
And I think it's something that with your book and the age group that the book hits and such, it's such an important message for kids to hear, and on that level that they can get it. I was just looking at some of the illustrations. It's such a fun book. I love the back cover of the book with all the colors being represented there and just the little snippets and such. So I guess the question I was going to ask is, when you were going on your book tour and such, and you're going to these places and you're having kids come in and they're looking at and such, how did that feel? What was that reception like in terms of being able to see people read your work for the first time?
It's surreal. It really is. And I honestly can't even put it into words, how emotional I leave some of these book events, and these kids just move you and they ask you the most amazing questions, and they really actually make you think about, like, what are you doing and how did you get here? And here you think you're doing something so simple, but yet it's just so inspirational for them. And it's pretty cool. It honestly, it's the other part of this too has been, I actually went to school to be a teacher and chose to change paths kind of, and I was junior year in college and changed my major. And so just being around these kiddos, and we always do like an arts and crafts event with it, has just brought me back to my passion and my love for and the energy that these kids give me. And so I've been through this process, able to fulfill some of that void that I didn't get, that I wanted to always come back to. And so that's been pretty special as well.
How fantastic. It's remarkable, and to be able to tap into that you always had that passion. And so now you still found a way. I mean, how many people out there
years later
getting jobs and other things, but there was always something that they, were passionate about, that to do something like that in your free time, you're not parked on the couch, just, watching TV, you're out there making a difference in the world.
Yeah. And I do quite a bit of work also locally with some of the schools as well. So anytime they have an author day, or if there's, a theme that they're doing and they want me to come in and speak, I do it. And I love those opportunities. I encourage them. So if there's any local schools that are looking for anybody to come in and talk to their kiddos about just their superpowers from within, and, anything about art and just learning about kindness and love, just positive messages, I love doing that. It's been such an amazing part of the process.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah, I know. I always loved when I could go in the classroom and be that mystery reader for the day.
Yeah, that's fun.
Where you come in and you're reading a book that your kids know, but the other kids don't know. And with this, I'm assuming that everybody brings themselves into the book that they're reading. So everyone reads it in a different way and sees it in a different way. And that's one of the aspects that leads into it as well.
Now, has there been, like, what's the most unexpected thing through the process? Was there anything that really surprised you about it?
I think the most unexpected, so you work so hard to get the book out the door, and that at the time seemed like the hardest part, right? So just looking at every single line over and over again, every little illustration, every sentence you wrote, and it can actually make you crazy. So you like reread and want to rewrite, and you get to a point where you have to let go. And the process of, finally getting it to the printer, all of that was so much work. And I got the book, I have it in my hands, and then you launch the book, but then there's just so much work to getting the book out there and then keeping it alive and talking about it. And so whenever you self-publish, those are things that you have to fully control. So you've got to be very active on social. You have to be very active in trying to get the book represented through bookstores. And so it's a lot of, I call it smiling and dialing, where you contact the bookstore and basically beg them to take the book and, or here's a free copy, and just to get the story out there and circulated. I've also spent a ton of time just trying to get different coverage and different PR for the book. So this is my first podcast I'm doing, which has been so incredible. And it's so nice to be able to do it locally. But I would say that, it's just a continuation of trying to keep at it. And it's hard. It's an incredibly competitive space. It's interesting. This is a true statistic that during the pandemic, I think everybody and their extended family wanted to write a story because everyone had more time. So there is truly an influx of manuscripts out there, and it is very, very difficult to, it's a crowded space, and it's difficult to really try to keep the momentum going. So I would say that, to answer your question, it has been learning to be very patient, but also continuing to push forward and keep at it.
Great. No, we're so pleased that we're able to have you on and to promote. We love promoting small business and the different events, and how we started Welcome to Livingston was that we had noticed so many people moving in to the county from other areas, and it has such a great culture. And I think you and your story just match in with that culture so well. So to be able to bring you on here and to kind of focus in on how great that is has been definitely a pleasure here today. Now, if there was one thing that you want to make sure that people take away from this interview about you and your book, and what would it be?
I would just say that to truly, this is more of advice that I guess I have, is to discover your passion. Every single moment is a moment we can create. And that's what I always tell my kids. There's this Dr. Seuss quote, and I actually have it framed in my office, and I love it. It's, "You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way." And that's what I try to live by. I'm just trying to share a simple message that I think we've somewhat lost touch of. I know we talked about this a little earlier, but there's beauty within all of us. We just need to seek it out in each other and allow those that we perceive are different from us to feel safe to show their colors. And so I think the message is simple. It's just to always lead with positive intent, a good heart. And as I tell my kids, just choose kindness always.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Now, in terms of where can people go to find out more information about your book?
The best resource is the website, and that is www.crimsonthecrayon.com, and you can learn all about Crimson. There's actually some really fun activities on there as well, and he has some fun question and answers, and you can learn about myself as well as the illustrator Lana Trazer, and there's also a whole section on where you can buy the book, whether you choose to do it right on the site or you, like I said, there's a number of local bookstores, and it is available on Amazon.
Wonderful.
And we appreciate you bringing in some extra books that will have signed copies. So that'll be a fun thing. We'll need, we're kind of surprised, so we didn't know. So we'll figure something out in terms of using that for promotional purposes for people that are interested in getting the book.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get some more likes on our Facebook page. That might be kind of a fun.
And locally here, Livingston County, the best place is Two Dandelions.
Two Dandelions, absolutely. Yep, they are, like I said, they're my local headquarters bookstore. They are amazing. And I know they have plenty of them in stock. I make sure of that.
There you go.
That's where we purchased our copy.
I visit them on a monthly basis. But yeah, and I will be there March 31st for National Crayon Day for our crayon party at 11 o'clock.
Wonderful.
Great.
So, and I think the last question is your favorite question.
Well,
right?
it is, but you can ask it because I've been talking.
So we like to ask every guest, what is your favorite thing or what do you like best about Livingston County?
I love Livingston County. I love our little home in Brighton. I grew up actually in a very small downtown area, Plymouth, and this city reminds me so much of where I grew up. And I knew whenever I moved out here, this was where I wanted to root my family. Great people, hardworking people. We live in a super small cul-de-sac, and we are friends with all of our neighbors. They're all just individually so special. And so it's just a great place to live. Love the vibe. The downtown area is fun. I knew that I wanted to be in this community when I think it was a Memorial Day parade and like the entire city was lined up on Main Street.
Right.
And it's just fun. And it's just a great close-knit community, great schools, great people. And I feel very thankful to have landed here.
Absolutely.
That is great. And I love that so many people have so many different answers, but that community comes through so many times with our guests. And, I think that while our towns in Livingston County are getting bigger, at the same time, they always stay small. Mm-hmm. Every time I'm out someplace, I'm running into someone I know. And I think that is one of the greatest aspects of it, that I walk around the corner someplace and, there's a friend.
People.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Well, and even, so we moved here 20 years ago. And I think one of the things that I was struck by is people would say hello and they'd hold the door open for you as you were coming in behind them. And it was like, wow, this is a really nice place.
Yeah.
This has really been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank
and
you.
To really deep dive into Crimson and to being, a children's book author and just tying into just the local community, which is so important too.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for
it.
coming. So I would say to all of you out there, check out the book Crimson, go to her website. If you are in downtown Brighton, jump into Two Dandelions and find a copy of it. And also just check out our podcast. We can be found everywhere that you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, just Google Welcome to Livingston. Please subscribe, check out our other episodes.
Yep, every week a new episode focusing all in on Livingston.
And next week on the 31st, come out to Two Dandelions. You get to meet the author. There's going to be a lot of great activities, so bring your kids, and it'll be a fun atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, and
Welcome
to Livingston.